All right, welcome, blockheads. It is September 4th, 2024. It is 9:35 a.m. on the East Coast, United States. This is episode 92 of Business on the Block. This week on the pod, we're going to tell you why OpenAI's revenue is surging right now. We're going to discuss whether it's social media hate speech or censorship. And finally, we'll let you know why teacherless AI classrooms are coming. Yes, you heard that right. This is, again, Business on the Block, your weekly insight into the digital business revolution. I am joined, as always, by my lovely co-host, Michelle Peterson-Clark.
Hi, everyone.
And Mike Neubauer.
Good morning.
All right, so I'm going to take us directly into story number one. Coming off the information, ChatGPT has 200 million weekly active users. Last Thursday, the information reported that this is growing like wildfire, right? This number has doubled back since this developer conference in November, so about a year ago. People are now using it as part of their daily lives, according to the information, obviously. According to Sam Altman, OpenAI is on pace to reach $3.4 billion of annual revenue for this year. And according to the Wall Street Journal, in OpenAI's latest fundraising talks, the company's valuation is just over $100 billion. So it's fair to say that this company has finally found a way to monetize, and boy, are they. Thoughts around this? Mike, we're going to start with you. Good, bad? Is this a flash in the pan? The AI has been under pressure in the investment community, but it seems like ChatGPT is bucking the trend. What should we know?
I don't know about you guys, but I feel like every time we do this show, I wake up in Groundhog's Day. Every week, we either talk about something that's happening with ChatGPT or AI or something that's about to fall off of a cliff. Their revenues are through the roof. Their revenues are plummeting. They can't make money. They make all the money in the world. They have 1 million billion users. They have no users. I mean, at some point, this song and dance pendulum has to stop. ChatGPT is a great tool. It's here to stay. Now we need to focus on how we're going to start incorporating it into all of these various tools that we have with our permission. Let's be clear about that, because how many of these types of companies now are just leveraging the fact that they can use this open source tool and bringing it into their own sources, their technologies, their devices without us knowing? And any responses we're getting, any interaction or engagement that we're participating in is just feeding this monster machine over and over and over again. I think the snowball is big enough. I think it has tremendous momentum moving down the hill. And, you know, I don't know about you guys, but I'm sick and tired of trying to analyze whether this thing is going to last or not. It's here to stay. The technology is going to continuously build around what we're seeing here.
So, Michelle, 200 million weekly active users. Active. What do you think?
Well, I was when I was reading this story, I'm like, haven't we, a bit like Mike, haven't we talked about this before? And then my second thought was, didn't we 2 weeks ago, was it 3 weeks ago, talk about how they're burning through $7 billion a year? So, you know, my maths has never been my strong suit, but I'm looking at the article and how many users they've got and how much revenue that means, and 7 billion to stay in, to keep the doors open. And I'm thinking that's a loss, right?
So this is a startup, though, still. And I'll remind people the numbers are gargantuan. There's a lot more zeros this time around. However, the reason they're fundraising, they need more money. They're running out of money. That's still the factor.
Yes.
They're running out of money, but yet they're building infrastructure all over the place to support the power generation that this is going to require. They're building nuclear power plants specifically to run this technology, right? Like, this is not, you know, this is happening. This infrastructure investment is occurring. It's not doing that because they're broke. They see the potential. They see the growth. And if, you know, you do the math, 200 million users, let's just say half of that is paid users. That's $2 trillion that they're getting, $2 billion that they're getting every single month.
Right. So if you take a look at the run sheet of who they've been pitching their wares to in terms of funding, you know, companies like NVIDIA and Apple, and like there's all of Silicon Valley is throwing, they want in on this. Obviously, there's money here. So this is now becoming not just a Microsoft story. This is honestly a global technology story. And your point, Mike, about nuclear power plants, I don't think people realize that.
Well, that's a big deal. That's a huge investment. That's going to have a massive impact on energy consumption and loads, about all this stuff that's going on with this green energy talk. Like, we need to power these things in some capacity, right? They don't power themselves. And this is the joke about the whole thing. I mean, South Park, as ingenious as they are in so many levels, the one thing that they got right was, when the internet goes nuts, you just got to simply unplug it and plug it back in. Well, this is going to be no different. When the machines take over and, they start using something for different power sources, we're going to lose the ability to unplug it. So how do we prevent that? We maintain control. We need to continuously invest into upgrading it, making sure that we have at least some sense of harness and responsibility with where this goes. But similar to all of our discussions with respect to blockchain and crypto and all these other things, this is a borderless technology. And we need to remember that these things are going to be replicated time and time again. They're going to be white labeled. They're going to be, slapped on their own particular use case, which we'll get into later on in this episode. It's just going to be a matter of how much money is going to be invested from the consumer to participate, when ultimately they can realize they could do it themselves. I'll tell you who the biggest people who are in trouble right now are coders, right? Coders are going to become the shoe repairmen of the 1900s. Before you know it, this thing is just going to be able to code whatever it wants. It's going to create better code, more simplistic code that requires less consumption of energy. It's only a matter of time before they become sort of archaic, careers. And when I was growing up, that was the career you needed to be in. You needed to understand that.
So ironically, Mike, not to pitch my wares here, but I posted an article last night entitled "Comms Not Code." And it is about the
I saw that.
Right. And I think that people don't. The reason I posted it came on the back of a conversation with a technologist out of Silicon Valley. They legitimately don't understand. The technologists globally are confused as to why the startup founders are having such a hard time right now. Coding is not needed anymore. Like, your skills in coding, and it's never going to come back. Like, the AI does it, and it's just like content writing. So the reality is, this is shifting the business game. My big takeaway was that, number one, regular usage of the AI tool now is a thing. And that sounds so basic, but people didn't know what it was even a few months ago. We'd have conversations with family members and they were like, yeah, I've heard of it, but I don't really use it. People are using it now. If there's 300 million people in the United States, 200 million people using this thing weekly, just for context. But more importantly, Mike, to your point, the moat is disappearing. The ability for anyone to just create a technology widget is, and again, that was the point of the article I'd written. I feel like that's going to affect business way more than just that ChatGPT is making OpenAI a lot of money. Like, there's downstream repercussions for how all of business reacts once coding is not really required anymore.
And I mean, I think one of the things too that we need to, we're a show that likes to talk about business, and we want people to understand how they can improve their business and what all this stuff means for them. And I think that if you have been, I'm sure that there are still some people, like in the early internet days, if you've been sitting on the fence about AI and how it might apply to your business or how you can use it for your business, if you don't step in soon, it will race so far ahead of you that you'll get left behind. So I think that it's important to, and that doesn't mean sack all your people and use AI for writing all your content or doing your marketing or doing all your coding, for example. But what it does mean is that you could look at processes that you do in your business. How can you speed them up? What can you do in an AI environment that is taking someone a long time to do now in your business? Can you put them to work doing something else while the AI bot does the weekly Excel spreadsheets that they've been doing for 20 years, that kind of stuff. So I think it's important to, think about it not as it's taking all of our jobs and everybody's going to be out of work and whatever. It's like, how can I actually use this to make my business better, faster, make more money? And that's really, I think, where we need to start to turn our minds, and could be one of the reasons why their user base has started to explode, because people are actually coming on board.
I want to comment on the deflationary effects on income, though. Technology, like finance, was always one of those fields that just was one of the high income fields. Yeah. And unfortunately, if you don't need 1,000 coders, you can now do it with 100 coders. right? You've got 100 humans overseeing the agentive AI machines doing their thing. That means you have to pay less. Like you'd get that cream of the crop, and then that's pretty much all you need. And I think that there's going to be downstream repercussions on income in the tech world, which not good for the folks in the space. I don't know how this all plays out, but it's definitely going to be a deflationary pressure.
Well, is it safe to assume that the term prompt engineer is just not a viable career anymore?
But it was for a few minutes.
Yeah, for 18 seconds.
I was about to say, took the words out of my mouth, Mike. I was about to say, you mean I'm not going to get $300K a year as a prompt engineer anymore? Damn.
You were for 3 months.
But let me just expand. 3 months. Let me just expand on what Michelle talked about, because it falls in line with what I was thinking about too. I mean, the efficiencies of this tool from an operation perspective on a business, and this is what I do, right? This is my career. How do I make the engine run more smoothly? How do I make it run more efficiently, more cost efficiently, more reliable, more accurate, without the noise, without the opinions, without any of that stuff? Well, this is a great tool that could potentially do that. Now, I say potentially because we all know that there are still several fingerprints on this technology. Some are good, some are bad, some are, other reasons driven. But the truth is that when you start talking about the infrastructure and the operational control of a business, especially a small business, you don't want to sit there as a business owner who makes widgets or provides some service to sit there and learn the technology. That's not your business, right? So whenever you have what's called no-code solutions, these are the tools, the softwares, the hardwares, the devices that are designed by its very nature to cater to the people who don't want to learn or understand the technology, who don't have the time to understand it. And this is where a tool like AI can easily come into the picture. This is my business. This is what I'm trying to accomplish. What is my quickest path to victory? And let it just, whatever system it can provide, let it run the calculations and provide some sort of an output. Then you, as the business owner who knows your business, knows your customer, knows your targeted goals, can sit there and analyze it as if you're basically hiring a consultant. And this consultant is sort of like your business coach that can give you some sort of a guidance. And if there's tools that it can incorporate as well, then that's a great solution. But you don't want to spend all day, trying to analyze and psychoanalyze the best way to do your business, or else nothing gets done.
But that's all these big firms are going to do, Mike. Like, I don't know, maybe 20 episodes back, we were talking about the solopreneur, entrepreneur, creator folks are all going to be innovating with this tool. And the big B2Bs are just trying to efficiency, remove the people that they have so they can save money on shareholder value.
That's fine. But those people that get removed, what are they going to do?
Become the entrepreneur class.
Exactly. That's my point. So I think we're all sort of in agreement here that, or maybe I'm wrong, the world is a better place when you have a bunch of small businesses that are, operating independently versus the monster conglomerates.
All right. As a small business owner, I agree with you. But if you're Jeff Bezos or, formerly, if you're Elon Musk, like you want to be in control of the entire monopolization of that industry.
Yeah. But when he was selling books out of his garage, he didn't care about that. Maybe he thought that he would want to get to that point, as any small business owner does. There is no limit. You got to, that's the driving force of what a small business can become. But I also feel that we live sort of in this weird world where, if some of these larger corporations don't exist, then the smaller businesses are the ones that you can actually maintain those relationships with. You can hire the right people with. You get more shit done. That's the bottom line.
My final takeaway on this is that OpenAI is expanding their first mover advantage with this, clearly. And I think that this will have implications for all of us down the road. I don't know how it plays out with Gemini, et cetera. And of course, Strawberry is in the works for OpenAI. But the reality is, using an AI tool of some sort in your business is not even a conversation anymore. It's just the way it's going. All right. I was going to take us into story number 2, if that's okay with you folks. The controversy on Elon Musk here is, will Brazil's X ban spread to other countries? X has been banned in Brazil, for those who don't know, after refusing a Brazilian government order to remove the accounts of 7 specific anti-government commenters. Their Supreme Court over there ruled these accounts were spreading, quote, hate speech. Musk has refused the request, saying that suppressing free speech is not legal under Brazilian law, And this is now raising questions about whether similar bans could occur in the United States and or Europe. For this, we'll start with you, Michelle, since you're closer to the action in that regard. What are your thoughts around this? We know how much you love Elon Musk and what he's done with Twitter.
Since when is England closer to Brazil?
I'm talking
That's
to
what
you.
I was about to say.
Oh no, it was a
thinking,
Europe
what?
reference. Sorry. In terms of Europe, you'll be our eye in the sky there. No, Mike, you're probably closer to Brazil here for us.
Yeah.
So, yes, everyone who listens regularly will know that I'm not necessarily a fan of Elon. If you were a free speech libertarian, I guess you would say this is absolutely the most worst, terrible thing, and it's, thin end of the wedge and the sky is falling, all of that kind of stuff. But if you take maybe the middle ground or a little bit further left, perhaps, that you might be thinking, well, surprisingly, someone's actually trying to stand up to him. Now, whether it will work or not, I don't know. But Elon likes to be in charge. Elon likes to do what Elon likes to do, regardless of the rules. I think he's a ask for forgiveness rather than permission kind of guy. And so I think from that point of view, this story is really about him now, doing stuff that he knew he wasn't supposed to do. He didn't really care. And he kind of doesn't really want to censor people anywhere with regards to stuff on Twitter these days. But I think that this is now a case of having to ask for forgiveness. Perhaps maybe they'll put in a few things. Maybe they'll put some moderators in to the content in Brazil. I don't know. But it's just one in a long line of people suing Elon over various things. Is this the 3-monthly Let's Sue Elon show? Probably,
Do we expect this to spread to Europe and or America?
Well, I don't think it's ever going to spread to America, but, Europe,
right.
possibly.
Mike, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, we are now September of 2024. I remember life in 2019 where censorship was sort of frowned upon. And then all of a sudden it became globally acceptable for people who win a popularity contest in the form of voting to actually implement fascistic, regulations on censorship of free speech. And, all of a sudden take these types of actions on a geopolitical scale. I think this is absolute madness. I think this is phase 2 of what we saw happen with Telegram in France just a week ago. Let's be honest for 2 seconds and take Elon out of the picture. Who does this really hurt? Does it hurt Twitter? Does it hurt anybody around the world that's looking to see a girl's ass in Brazil that as they shake it on, some parade? Or does this actually hurt the communication efforts that they try to put forth within their own country? We saw countries try to implement things like this, like Cuba, and it has not worked out well. The lack of communication and the specific sources of information that people are able to get from a vetted result or a vetted source. This is everything that 1984 was written about, right? The top-down power control of who can do what and what they can do. It's not hurting Elon. Elon is sending shit to space. He can give a fuck about what happens in Brazil. I'm not, there's no monetary benefit for him other than saying, hey, we're offering you this free speech platform in order to take advantage of saying whatever you want, whether it's about your government or not. I just hate the fact that this advancement in communication and technology has really taken 2 steps back with these types of government interference and censorship, just practices. There's no other way to put it. And it all started with COVID.
But Mike, it's for your own protection.
Who the hell is to say that? You know what I mean? Like that but see, that's the point. People are not dumb they're not as dumb as people think, or at least some of these leaders think. And
no, I don't. I disagree with that.
so
I think
you
people are really
agree
dumb.
that somebody who wins
People
a
are really
popularity
dumb.
contest has the ability to censor this kind of stuff? I
The
don't agree with
problem
that at all.
this, right? The problem with this, right, was that when you used to stand on a street corner in New York City and espouse all sorts of bullshit about stuff, only the few hundred or few thousand people who walk past you every day would have heard what you were saying. Maybe 10 of those might have gone, hey, that sounds good. I'm going to stop and listen to this guy, girl, whatever. Now, the problem we have now is that these idiots actually have a global platform in which they can spread some of this stuff, which frankly, some of it is really dangerous, because what it does is it forms collectives amongst all the other crazies in the world. Hence, you get things like suicide bombers, or, blowing up things, or, mass sex cults and all of this kind of stuff, because people can collectively work together much easier now. Now, I don't think that there should be a blanket ban on all sorts of things everywhere or whatever, but what this is talking about is some moderation.
So
And
I'm going to tell you a dirty little secret.
Moderation is bad.
I'm going to tell you a dirty little secret. The Walter Cronkite, who has that same platform that reached all those people, was still spewing the same bullshit and creating those same cult-like groups. Regardless on what you think, just because they were vetted and allowed to do it instead of the soapbox guy in New York doesn't make it right. The one thing that is valuable in all of this is the ability for discussion, the ability for debate, the ability for people to not necessarily hitch themselves to a wagon in order to blow shit up, because again, this is the black eye that technology always has. We saw it with NFTs. Why am I going to buy an ape PNG picture for this type of money? But what people fail to realize is all of the good that actually comes with the ability of these technologies to reach mass scale as well. The conversations and the ability to enhance certain areas, the ability to improve the lives or the mental health of people around the world, because they know they're not alone when they're dealing with certain situations. There's a lot of good that comes from this kind of stuff too. And frankly, a handful of people, a small fraction of a percentage of a massive country on this planet, just restricted that from millions and hundreds of millions of people.
So I'm actually going to take the side here in the middle. I actually am a fan of opposing viewpoints, meaning that your point, Mike, about having debate, I think is important. There's suppression of anyone's voice, left or right, will always result in violence. History proves that. So the ability for us to argue is actually something we need to learn to be better at as a global society. But I am a fan of this. I think that the pendulum swings. You get the liberal, you get the Democrats, you get the Republicans in America, the conservatives. It doesn't matter. Free speech, and whether or not it's hate speech versus free speech, the definitions themselves, these should all be discussed. And the price of freedom is security in some regards. Like Michelle's got a good point. There are crazies that do crazy things because they've been given ideas, and that's not good. But the price of not having discussion, I think, is higher. And that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. I don't personally, to answer the question on that we've raised, I don't see Brazil's X ban spreading either to the United States or to Europe. I just don't think people would accept that. But there is a global pushback right now from the right in every country. We're seeing this in the German elections against opposition government that is, suppressing people's voices. We'll see. We'll see.
But I also think that the leaning right these days is really more about it's more about immigration in almost all of the countries that's going on right now. It's about
America too, though. That's the same in the United States.
Yes. Yeah. That's why. So I think that the rise of the right in some respects is more about controlling our own borders and the rhetoric that comes with all of that stuff.
Well, I would argue that in that same construct, it's about protection of the citizens, because now forget about security, but now they're paying for all of this, right? So, in a conservative, which is traditionally right-leaning manner, I mean, I guess you said it was opposite by you, Michelle. So I don't know if it's right, left. I don't know what it is over there, but in a conservative mindset, you want to just be left alone. You just want to go about your own devices, run your own business, make your own money, do what you got to do, and just make sure that what you're doing has a purpose for your family.
I think this speaks to the speed of movement. So you want immigration in any country. You need some form of immigration, moderated, controlled. You need some form of movement to green energy, away from carbon fuels. But like the reality is the speed of which we've gone into this, and in some cases it's been forced, results in the pushback and the violence and the arguments. I think that as long as things move slowly and people can integrate things like AI, it works. The problem is when it's moving too quickly or there's no opposition conversation. And so I don't know that.
So here's a question. Would AI ban Twitter in Brazil?
It depends who's coding the AI.
Well, I mean, let's assume that it's a non-biased opinion, right? Let's assume that the dude on the corner in New York or the guy on the news channel, let's say he doesn't have an opinion and it's not an opinion-based show anymore. It's just facts. Isn't that what the best use case of AI is really about?
Hold on, but Mike, you can't just disregard that. Prompt engineering, even though we make fun of it, is we're prompting the thing. We're trying to get to
I'm the
goal.
guy in the soapbox saying that, right? I'm the guy that's always saying there's fingerprints on this technology. Until ChatGPT 4 creates ChatGPT 5, I know somebody's got their hands in the mix here. But
I think one of the most important things about this story is that it is about the lack of moderation. If they had some moderation controls, if they looked at some things, and I'm not even, I'm talking about things like, let's take down child pornography pictures or, whatever, those sorts of things that everyone who's a normal human being finds abhorrent, right? We're not talking about left opinions or right opinions about, immigration or any of those
on certain things
of finance, right? But if they had some form of moderation controls that complied with that country's particular laws, then this would not be a story. But
question: why is it just Twitter that got banned?
Elon's gone, stuff them. I'm doing whatever the hell I like. I don't have moderation departments in any country anymore. I'm not doing it. And therefore they've gone, well, okay, it's our sandbox. We're getting rid of you. Why
is Twitter the only one banned? There's pedophile groups on Facebook. There's ChatGPT coming out with all sorts of crap. OpenAI is generating images of kiddie porn. Why aren't any of those banned? The common theme here, and you got to think about this for a second. Elon is creating a system to colonize another planet. He has green cars as an industry. He's the leading green car manufacturer. This guy should be at the pinnacle of what these people idolize as a monster advancement in technology. The one caveat that he has is freedom of speech, and that's when they crucify him and ban him from a country. Look, I respect the hell out of the guy as an individual entrepreneur, as a business guy, as a tech savvy guy. I don't agree with everything he says, but I respect the fact that he knows what he's doing. Okay. And defending free speech and putting up all those billions just to take over this particular platform because he saw the direction it was going. It was moving into a censorship propaganda outlet. It was becoming that, and he prevented it from happening. So what I asked the question again, if Brazil is taking that route because child porn pictures and Elon and all this, why don't they ban every other technology that clearly has those platforms on it?
Shall I jump in? Mark's going.
I was going to defend you. Don't worry, Michelle. Go ahead, Michelle.
I think the thing with this is all about perception, right? Facebook, WhatsApp, Twitter. It's Facebook, WhatsApp,
Telegram,
TikTok, whatever. Pretend that they have moderation controls, whether they do or not, how they apply them or not, right? Elon's basically said no to
so it's all bullshit. This is Apple's version of your stuff is private.
Let Michelle finish.
There is some moderation, I'm hoping. I mean, I guess so, because I don't get to see the stuff that other people talk about. So I'm going to assume that things do get moderated, so not everybody sees them, right? But I guess he's just sort of said, well, I'm the free speech guy, therefore I'm not going to moderate anything. I mean, I think that's
the biggest threat.
That's the pendulum swinging extreme that we don't need.
But that's don't you think that's the problem? The fact that that's the biggest threat right there. You just said it. That is the biggest problem facing this world in other countries trying to ban this platform or potentially banning this platform. That is a huge threat to what they're trying to accomplish here in this population control.
I'm not laughing at you. Crawling Moon, on Bolt has wanted to know why we don't have our tinfoil hats on.
Because we debated this before the show, but the reality is it's not a conspiracy.
I'm not. So, Crawling Moon, I said that I didn't know if this was conspiracy theory or not because it's technically not conspiratorial. However, I want to make the point. Two things. Number one, this is a microcosm of society. I love the fact that you two disagree on Elon Musk and can discuss this. As angry as you may get, Mike, there's respect there for Michelle.
I'm not angry. I'm just right, and I want to be loud so that nobody can talk over me.
This is my
point,
from
though. Florida.
Yeah, I'm from New York. I know all about that. The reality is no one's going to convert anyone's opinion, right? You're not going to make Michelle believe what she doesn't and vice versa, Michelle, with Mike. And that's okay. Like, that's the part where people don't get to.
That's the point. And frankly, to that point, Mark, and I'm going to cut you off because you made a very valid point here. The goal shouldn't be to sway an opinion one way or another, but the goal should be to have a platform in order to have the debate.
Agreed.
You're right. 100%. I'm not here to convince Michelle.
My wife know.
I'm not here to convince Michelle one way or another, but I'm also not going to sit here and accept that everything she says that I disagree with, I just have to nod along with. And she's the same way.
I agree. The second point I wanted to make, besides the fact that we can debate and respect, and that's the way it should be in the world, is the founder of Telegram was recently arrested in Paris, those who aren't following the news, for the same kind of concept, Mike. No moderation, free speech, no policing on the platform, and the governments don't like that. So there is an argument to be made in Mike's defense, that maybe less angrily, that there's a control factor that we need to be aware of, and it's not necessarily nefarious, but of course, there's a fine line between safety and freedom of speech, but we should always keep an eye on it. And as Americans, we're very familiar with that concept. I think the world hasn't really had that debate yet. That is not.
Well, they haven't had the platform to have that debate yet. And then when they try to create one, it gets stripped away from them. Listen, the reality is that history has taught us, and Michelle, I know you're into history. History has taught us very, very well that when power is given to a governing body to implement things like this, they never give it back. So if you're an innovative guy like Pavel or like Elon, why are you even going to put yourself through this process, this rigor to actually go out and invent and come up with these new technological advances if all you're going to do is get arrested and shit on?
All right.
Well, can I jump in for a couple of those things? Firstly, the Telegram guy would not have been arrested if he didn't become a French citizen. So they kind of basically said, you can become a French citizen, which solved his other problem because he's Russian, isn't he? And he previously was Russian. And therefore, he agreed to the laws of the land. So whether you agree with the laws or not, that is the reason why he got arrested when he went back to France. So that's the first thing. Secondly, I think that unfortunately, there are a lot of people in the world that can't discuss and debate and or argue like we can and still be friends at the end of it. There are a lot of people in your state in Florida, Mike. If we were in a cafe, guns would have been out and people would have been shot.
You see, that's an extremely naive position to think that everybody's just sitting here waiting for an argument to blast each other. That's why
a shotgun under the table.
Hey, listen, more people die in America every day than many countries combined everywhere else. So it's true. Don't say it's not true.
I want to comment on something Michelle mentioned. Michelle, you're right about the fact that there would be arguments. I think that the world needs to learn how to debate civilly, and it will take time. But the reality is not letting people talk isn't the answer. Just like pulling out guns in a cafe is not the answer.
215.3 million people cannot communicate right now. That's the answer.
We're learning as a society, Mike. It's the same way World War I didn't teach us the lesson. World War II did, hopefully. Like, that's the way it works. It's unfortunate. We learn slowly. All right. Before this rips apart the foundations of our podcast, I'm going to move us on to story number 3. We're going to remove our tin.
I love you, Mike.
I love you too.
Taking us closer to home here, the UK's first teacherless AI classroom is opening in London. Yes, you heard that right. A private school in London is opening the UK's first classroom taught by artificial intelligence instead of human teachers. They say the tech is allowing for precise, bespoke learning. Critics say it will be a, quote, soulless, bleak future. But the reality is students will be using a mixture of computers and VR headsets for a semester of education. Michelle, I'm going to let you lead this conversation for obvious reasons.
Interesting, isn't it? A few things about it. Oddly, you would think with Chat GPT or AI, replacing teachers in classrooms, that perhaps an education in that vein might not be as expensive. But it's £27,000 for the 1 year course, which I think is absolutely outrageously incredibly large amount of money. It's only for the core subjects. So I guess we're talking maths and the sciences possibly, except if you have to do experiments, and maybe English. So they do acknowledge in the school, when you go to the school's website and you have a look at it, they do acknowledge that that art, things like art will still, and sport will still be done by real teachers. Like, thank goodness. I'm not sure how AI would be able to umpire a sports game, but there you go. It is coming. I think that there is really a ground here to be said, a case here to be said for the middle ground. I think that we have to teach children how to use this. We need them all to become prompt engineers, frankly, in terms of being able to use the technology. I mean, we know kids don't get taught how to, run a checking account, not that there are anymore, but you know what I mean, how to run their finances properly, and all of the real world stuff they don't get taught properly in schools. And so I think that it's important that schools do start using AI in the classroom and using apps and technology and VR headsets and stuff, like as we talked, I think earlier on when we were talking about the Apple headsets that came out, was that, imagine when you're doing ancient Rome or ancient Greece and you can put a VR headset on and you can take the kids around, the history, and they're actually walking in their footsteps and stuff. So stuff like that could be amazing and could be really good. I think that having a classroom where they're only learning like this is, at the moment, I think I said in our chat, what could possibly go wrong? I mean, I think in these initial stages, quite a lot, given the fact that it was Abraham Lincoln was a black man. Is that what ChatGPT
George Washington. Yeah, he's now black.
Oh, George Washington. Yeah, that's right. Sorry.
Abe is next. Don't worry.
Yeah. So that's what I think. I think that there's a middle ground here, and I think this is a bit extreme at one end, but we'll see, won't we, as to what their results will be at the end of this year.
Mike, what do you think when the professor is Hal?
Well, I mean, when this thing really started to get traction, and we started to really discuss this almost on a weekly basis, I mentioned at the time that my biggest fear was that we as humans would start to shift the way we think around what we have as a predictive output by these AI tools. And I feel like this is just going to put that on steroids. Yes, there's still a lot of fingerprints on it. There's still a lot of, bots and different LLMs that could be created for these purposes that obviously speak a specific narrative. In theory, it works. I don't know how in practice it's going to be effective. Again, this technology is not at the stage yet where it can be personified as an expert professor in anything.
Yeah.
What it does is it scotch tapes information around the internet, and it provides it in a way that coincides with the prompt that's put in. So I don't know how this is going to judge competency. I don't know how you can actually grade somebody about having the ability to absorb information that it truly doesn't even understand. There's a lot of gray areas when it comes to this. The fact that it's costing £27,000 in order to do it, that tells me it's a grift. This is no different from somebody taking an OpenAI system that they could easily use on their own for $20 a month and slapping a $200 price tag on it and saying, hey, we can do your marketing or your SEO for you. So I think there's a lot of issues with this. It's going to be interesting to see who those, pioneer groups and that first graduating class, and really what skills they are able to implement with this from somebody who has not taken the class. I'd like to see that cost comparison, or that knowledge-based comparison. If this is a tool that has the ability to advance AI, then that's a different discussion. But to take a specific topic and say, hey, AI is the teacher on this, I'm completely against it.
All right. So for those of us who are not from the Commonwealth, the price on tag on this thing is $35,000 USD. That's a very expensive
A year.
course
Yeah.
per year. So I want to reference an old TED Talk given by Seth Godin, the marketing guy, entitled "What is School For?" And for those who have the time, it's worth your 30 minutes to watch this thing. The purpose of school has never really, it's getting fuzzier as time is moving on, is this point. And so I'll tie that into the AI bias we all know is a factor with George Washington being black, Michelle. We have to be really careful of what is the goal of what we want to happen with this education when it's being run by computers like this. So I think from the philosophical standpoint, it's interesting. It bears watching. It's definitely going to develop. But from the business perspective and the program here, the business on the block, from a standpoint of how this is going to affect the financial world, there's a school system with pensions and costs attached. And this changes the business model. This is literally a new financial business model for education if this works. It's early, right? All of AI is early. But you flash forward 20 years, if you could have an institution running with no teachers, agentive teachers, if you will, and you've got $35,000 USD per student, it's a moneymaker. So, Mike, it is a grift right now. I agree. But this is all a pilot program to change how schools can now make money. They move from being a government-run educational facility to what they really are become anyway in the real life under the creator economy, alternative education. I don't know how this goes, but it could go either way.
Bridge it back to the first part of this discussion. When I mentioned that the no-code solutions are the effective way that business owners can operate utilizing these tools. You won't need this education if the education is provided by the same tool that you have access to regardless.
You need education, though.
You don't need education. What are you going to get education from the AI bot that you're interacting with the AI bot with?
All right. If I don't know how to do something, right now I can go on YouTube and learn it, right?
Right now you can ask ChatGPT how to to do it. And it will tell you how the best way to do it, the best way to interact with itself. You don't need $35,000 price tag in order. This is the crypto bros of education.
I love that.
I agree with that. I mean, I think there's a couple of things. Let's look at how this might develop. If we think back to year 2000 and we think about the birth of the internet and people starting to talk about maybe one day I could, universities could be online or whatever. And at that early stage, before the internet was a toddler, people would have said, no way will universities ever do anything online. You've got to go into the classroom. You have to turn up on campus, blah, blah, blah. Now, there are renowned universities now who do online teaching. All of them do, but, there are some universities now that are only online. However, as a caveat to that is that there is still a tutor or an actual real person that either grades the papers or you can ask questions to and all of that kind of stuff. It's not 100% online, not 100% artificial, like made up with just the videos and whatever. So if we think about that now, so AI classroom teachers, students doing courses with AI, it's probably 10 years away from being really good enough to actually give kids a good grounding. One of the things that I think is sad to see about this is that the interaction between people. So like Mike and I had our nice little chat before, those sorts of things can't happen if everyone's sitting in front of a screen with headphones on. If they're in a VR environment and we all go and work in Wendy's in the metaverse, no problem. Or we turn up there and have a drink together as a class, okay. But if you look at the picture that you're seeing two kids sitting there with headphones on looking at the screens. They're not talking to each other. They're not even doing the same module. So you can't even say, like when we used to elbow the person next to us in class and go, what did she say? Like, what's the homework? I didn't, whatever. You can't, that's not what this is. And I think that will create, like people problems down the track.
Well, it's also educational problems, right? So, I mean, I remember when Alexa first came out, and I remember watching a kid who was probably in 2nd or 3rd grade. His mom was like secretly recording him doing his math homework at the dinner table. And rather than actually understanding what multiplication was, hey, Alexa, what's 2 times 3? That's the way he did his homework, right? So, this is going to be no different. But again, those in-person interaction forums are also a pedestal, a platform for open dialogue and debate, right? Whether it's, for whatever the random topic is. But what I find interesting about the topics they chose with this AI classroom setting, I would have argued that art should have been one of the first ones. The AI generated prompts and all of the art that you can generate. Yeah. You can create all these different styles, and you can actually teach a little bit better about what are some of those renowned art practices and styles that you can implement in an art career. There's no, it's very subjective, so that, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just a matter of understanding the styles and how to actually implement it. Now, whether it can grade it or not, maybe you still have that same, PA or that TA, that tutor. But I find it interesting that the one field where AI is actually poor at, which is mathematics, that's the one they start with.
Good point. All right, I'm going to take us through the recap if that's all right.
Oh no, wait.
Oh, please, go ahead.
We have to talk about some of the questions and the comments in the Bolt chat, because
please.
It's been blowing up today.
See, open dialogue. If this was Brazil, nobody'd be able to talk.
That's not true.
Let's get into it.
So Insol said, imagine someone who's done their entire degree in the metaverse finally interacting with real people on the job, to which I replied, well, their job will probably be in the metaverse as well, so it probably won't matter.
Fantastic.
But, like we're talking about, haven't we? I mean, there's so much stuff these days about how, there's a whole, Gen Z or whatever, whichever generation is the current sort of, 15 to 20-year-olds who have spent their entire lives with technology. Their faces are in their phones, 20 hours a day, and they find it really difficult to talk normally to people. I mean, we've always, from the days of Game Boys and things like that, we always had our kids, we have dinner together every night, and it was always no technology at the table, because they had to sit and actually interact with each other and with us. We would talk about stuff. Did you see on the news? Did you hear today? Blah, blah, blah. All of that kind of stuff. But that's not happening these days, because kids are taking meals to their rooms and they're online with maybe their friends or doing whatever, and they're not having a lot of that kind of thing. And I think that part of the worry for me about this is that what does that mean long term? And as Insol brought up, how are people going to be able to communicate with people? I mean, one of the things we've talked a lot about on this show is that there really has been a turn back towards communication and community, and being able to converse with people and interact with people and hang out with people, not just online, but in real life. And this seems to me, in that regard, like longer term problems will come from someone who's only done their schooling or whatever in this way.
So I want to comment on that, Michelle. Great point. This really, if you translate that and extrapolate forward what you're saying, socialization and the social skills, interpersonal skills, become the real juice of success down the road.
Well, the jury's still out about long-term impacts on the way that this is going to have. But, if you think about it from the most primitive, perspective, I mean, we were really never designed to give a shit what happened down the street, let alone halfway around the world, right? Like the abundance of information about having to know every single thing that's happening at every waking second is really taking its toll on the immediate 6 inches in front of your face, right? So like you, we have very strict technology rules in our house. My kids have never touched an iPad. You know, we go to the doctor's office, they play with cars, they read books. The doctor comes in, the medical professional comes in and is shocked that these kids aren't nose deep in some sort of an iPad or phone. You know, the ability to distract with constructive means of understanding how the world works does not need to rely on technology. Again, a technological piece is a tool. There's advancements. There's really great things that come with it. But at the end of the day, we still have a functional brain. We still have our own computers, our own eye. Forget about the eye that we need to start feeding. So it will be interesting to see what kind of long-term impacts this has, what type of metaverse university degrees, what people can do with that, what type of AI degrees. Who'd you study under? I studied under Professor Grok. Okay. Well, what did you learn? I learned that I can easily Google or prompt the same thing that he was throwing out at me and put it into some sort of a presentation format.
This is echoing your crypto bros for the education world. I agree with you, Mike. You don't need to pay this kind of money for this type of education.
Well, that's again where the grift comes in.
Yeah, I mean, and I think too, you know, for example, like at the moment, and my son's school was a particular example. You know, if you used AI in any of your essays this year, and we're going to run it through a filter, and you're going to fail, and you better confess, and you better come forward if you did, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. There was all this, you know, big brother kind of crap hanging over the kids' heads. Instead of, you know, like when I was at university or at school even, you went to the library and you pulled off the Encyclopedia Britannica and it told you 10 facts and you put them in your essay exactly like that. But you know, like in those days, they didn't go, well, you're not allowed to look at books and whatever. So, I mean, I think that there needs to be a balance. And as we talked about with the other stuff that the previous story today, there's extremes, there's pendulum swings, aren't there? And I think this has kind of gone all the way this way. And there needs to be, you know, something in the middle here.
In my house, I work overtime to teach my kids how wrong school is to dissuade this use of AI, and how backwards most of the kids are going to come out of the school system not knowing how to think critically, prompt machinery. Like, these are core basic skills the way it used to be, of like how to look someone in the eye and shake their hand. So I think it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I agree with you both. All right, I'm doing the recap here. This week we covered ChatGPT has 200 million weekly active users, $3.4 billion they'll make this year, according to their CEO. Brazil's X ban may spread to other countries. There's conversation around what is hate speech versus censorship. And finally, in the UK, we see the first teacherless AI classroom opening in London. Key takeaways from this one. Michelle, we'll start for you. What were your big thoughts on the stories we hit this week?
I think we've said it, I don't know how many times. I'm going to go back and start adding up how many AI episodes we've done. But as Mike said before, the technology is here to stay. What we need to do, I think, and particularly those of us that, you know, are in business and are around this type of stuff on a daily basis, we need to go, it's a tool. What can we do with it? You know, how can we leverage it to better our family? And that might mean our kids do have in the classroom some AI learning modules. It might mean that we let Elon go wild in Brazil. And it might mean that, you know, this time next year, ChatGPT could be at 1 billion users a month instead of 200 million.
It's heading that way. Mike, what are your thoughts on the big stories we hit this week?
So, I mean, opinions aside, this is a business show. And I'm always of a business mindset first when I look at any of the geopolitical landscape. And again, I give, you know, Elon a lot of credit for being an entrepreneur and a business mind as well. And if I were him, I would open the biggest goddamn VPN company in Brazil that it has ever seen.
Well, they get fined for being on. The Brazilians are not allowed to use the VPNs for it.
Well, he could figure out a way around them being able to figure it out. He's got satellites hovering all over that country. He's an innovative guy. He'll come through.
I agree with you, Mike, as a business
and
program.
I'll invest in it.
My big takeaway from this, and we already knew that ChatGPT was taking off. That's not going to stop. And we know that this argument around free speech, the AI stuff in the classroom fascinates me. But I really think from a business standpoint, the thing that we need to focus on right now is the censorship, hate speech, free speech thing. Not because of my moral positioning, but because it will direct business, right? If they shut down an X, if other platforms like Zuckerberg decides to come clean and say that they were forcing him not to say stuff, this will change communication in business. And I'm not sure yet how it's going to go. I just know that there's money at stake if people can or can't speak freely. So I keep an eye on that.
There's also a lack of innovation, and we talked about that a little earlier. So there is a direct correlation between what those issues are and the advancements in some of these innovative solutions and technologies.
Everyone knows that data is the new oil, and information wants to be free, right? These are truisms and statements that I didn't make these up, but we're in that world of, well, is the data free? How does this develop? And that's going to be money on the back end, depending on how things swing. So keep an eye on it from the business perspective. That's all we got for you this week, guys. We want to thank everyone. As always, shout out to the Bolt Nation. We know you guys are there every week, and we really do appreciate the engagement. We'll be back next week, 9:30 Eastern time, as we always are, LinkedIn Live. Final conversational thoughts from you two?
Follow us on Threads.
All right.
You know, for Christmas, I'm getting Mike a Business on the Block Threads account.
We'll be the only ones there.
See you next week, folks.